black light had a voice, not sound, not frequency. Something older, something that bypassed the ear entirely and arrived in the chest the way grief does, sudden and total, and what it said was not a word I could speak, but a word I could feel, a shape in the dark, pressing against the inside of my ribs, trying to fit beside the others. The sentence on my skin was the precursor's half. The black light was carrying the rest. His vitals are wrong. Bello shouted over the hum. Not panicked. Bello does not panic, but loud, which for her is the same thing. Heart rate is dropping. 38-32. He is slowing down to match the door's resonance. I could feel it. My pulse was not mine anymore. It belonged to the mechanism, to the circuit I had become, and each beat was wider and slower than the last, as if my heart was learning to keep time with something that measured its rhythm in centuries rather than seconds. The word in the black light settled. It did not ask permission. The others had not either, but this one was different. The precursor's words had been directions, bearing, distance, name, position, coordinates in a language built for navigation. This word was not a coordinate, it was a reply. I understood. The sentence was not a monologue, it was a conversation. The precursors had written their half across the grid, scattered it through worlds, hidden it in inscriptions that only a human body could carry. Call and response. Question and answer. The precursors had asked 10,000 years ago, and the thing beneath the grid was answering now, through the black light, through the open door, through me. It is talking back, I said. My voice was wrong. Too slow, shaped by the door's rhythm. The sentence has two authors. The precursors wrote the question. The thing beneath the grid is writing the answer. I am carrying both. What is the question? Holt asked. I knew. The words were assembling, precursor and other, alternating like lines of a poem. And the question was forming in the pattern they made together. It was not complex. 10,000 years of preparation, a grid of infinite worlds, a sentence scattered across reality, a dying man rebuilt and wired into the mechanism. All of it for a question so simple I almost laughed. Will you let us stay? The precursors had not built the grid to contain the thing. They had built on top of it because they had no choice. It was the foundation, the bedrock. You cannot remove bedrock. You can only ask it to bear your weight. And they had asked, in a language only the foundation could hear, carried by a body that was too broken to resist, and they had waited 10 millennia for the answer. The answer was writing itself beside the question, darker glyphs between the silver ones, not carved, stained. The color of deep water where the light gives out. I could read the precursor's half. The other half I could only feel, and what I felt was not anger, not hunger, not the malice I had imagined pressing against the glass of that dead world. Patience, a patience so vast it was geologic. The thing had been asked a question, and it had taken 10,000 years to consider its reply, and its reply was not a word I had a translation for, but the shape of it in my chest was closer to yes than to no. Closer. Not the same, Bello said. She was reading the scanner, reading the interleaved frequencies, precursor and other, and her voice had gone flat the way it does when the numbers tell her something she cannot argue with. It is a conditional yes. There is a clause. What clause? Rees asked. I felt it before Bello translated. The answer had a shape, and the shape had a hinge, and the hinge was me. Not me specifically, what I was. What the precursors had made me into, a body that could carry both halves of the conversation, a living point of contact between the surface and the foundation. A translator, Holt said, not guessing, knowing. At once a permanent translator, someone wired into both sides, someone who stays. There it was, the clause. The precursors had asked if they could remain on the grid, build their worlds, live on the bedrock. The thing beneath had considered for 10,000 years and answered yes, if you leave me a voice. A body at the origin, a relay that speaks both languages so that if I need to be heard, I can be heard. Not a prison, not a warden. A throat. The 11 before me, I said. They were not failed navigators. They were failed translators. The program was not trying to read the sentence. It was trying to find someone who could hold both halves. Holt nodded once. And the disease, I said. The rebuilt body. The signal I cannot stop carrying. You did not just need someone dying. You needed someone whose body would not reject either language. Someone already between states. Between the old flesh and the new. Between alive and not. Yes, Holt said. I looked at the door. At the four open faces. At the black light that was not an attack but a voice patient old, answering a question it had been asked before I was born. Before anyone I had ever known was born, I looked at my arms. Both languages. Both halves. The sentence was nearly complete. And when it finished I would be the full text, question and answer, written on a dying man who was no longer quite dying, and the circuit would close, and I would stay. The last word arrived. It was not dark, it was not silver, it was warm. The temperature of a hand held for a long time. The temperature of the door. The temperature of my rebuilt skin. And when it settled, the hum stopped. The cavern went silent for the first time since I had entered it, weeks ago, a lifetime ago, perfectly silent. Then the floor beneath me began to rise. It is coming up, Bello said. Not through the door. Through the floor. Through the foundation. The thing that had been the bedrock was moving, and I was standing on top of it, and the sentence on my skin was the only reason it had asked before it rose.